Okay, for those that just joined, good evening again. My name is Justin St. Louis, and I am your Northeast Region Chief this year for about 16 more days, and excited to wrap up the year with you all on this call this evening. To give you some context to kind of why we're here and why we're hosting this Town Hall, at the beginning of this year, one of our big priorities, as I'm sure you've seen on social media and at our various region events, was to actually orient the region to support the development of high performing lodges. The high performing lodge concept is something we're going to discuss this evening, and there are three primary components to it, one of which being unit elections. So we wanted to host a few town halls regarding each of those three key topics, talk about those things a little bit, provide the chance for you guys to ask questions. And of course, back in early October, we hosted the High Performing Lodge Summit, which was an event designed to focus on the three key performance indicators. We had over 100 airmen, Lodge Key 3s from across the region participate in that. We got a lot of really positive feedback. And I've heard a lot of great things following the event about how lodges have been able to use the information that we shared to actually get their lodges on track to be a high performing lodge. So, in terms of how this is going to work, I'd ask that you all mute yourselves. I believe that we can do that through an administrative function, but please just take the initiative to do that. I'd appreciate it. If you do have any questions, please, there's a message chat. Just send them directly to me via this WebEx platform. Again, this is Justin St. Louis, and I will answer them at the conclusion or towards the end of the webinar. If there are any that I'm unable to answer due to time constraints, or due to the fact that it's like a very specific question, then I will just directly respond to you, and I'll ask you to email me about the question afterwards. If you're not on the WebEx platform due to calling in, then I'd ask you to email me at 2018chief@northeast.oa-bsa.org. And as you'll see, Bob Trabala, our region chairman, my advisor, is joining us in the call tonight as well. Figured out that really strong lodges are good at these three things. So really strong lodges run 100% of unit elections within their council. That means that every single year, every single unit in their lodge's council has an order of the air unit election held, or if there are not scouts eligible in the troop, or if the unit maybe is opposed to actually hosting a unit election, they at least have an order of the air of visitation. And we're going to talk about, later on in this call, if you cannot host a unit election, what are some other things that you can do in terms of a presentation. But the order of the air gets their foot in the door at every single unit throughout their council every single year, and that's how we achieve 100%. High-performing lodges have a 90% induction rate, so 90% of the people that they actually get elected every single year go through their induction and become members of the order. And then the third term, activation, which is what our first town hall that we hosted back in September was about. And we have more information from that slide deck that's also available on our website. Feel free to take a look there. High-performing lodges have a 50% activation rate. So essentially, that means that within the first 6 months of being inducted into the OA, they get 50% of their new airmen to go to their first event. Okay, so whether that's conclave, whether that's a fellowship weekend, a chapter meeting, OA day, camp, whatever it is, they get 50% of their people to go to that event, because we've learned that the highest correlation, the highest sort of indicator of what causes people to actually stay active and to contribute to membership retention is going to an event following their induction. And if you have all three of these things, so 100% unit election rate, 90% induction rate, and a 50% activation rate, the kind of magic number is having a 14.5% density rate, meaning that 14.5% of the Boy Scouts within your local council are members of the Order of the Arrow. And today we're going to talk about unit election rate, which frankly is the most important of the three, because unit election rate is the first step in this process. And if we're not hosting unit elections in every single unit in the council, we're not going to have as many people to induct, which means that even if we have a 90% induction rate, if we weren't electing people in 100% of the units in the council, then there are people that we already missed out on. And obviously that number continues to drop when we get to activation, and then every year we figure out what the density rate is. So today I want to kind of share some best practices with you and talk with you specifically about unit election rate and what that means. It's something that's particularly close to my heart. My first job in the OA, I served as the unit elections chairman in my lodge back when we were an Anapashment lodge, and really got a firsthand experience as to how complicated of a process that can be, but more importantly, how important and critical it really is to the success of the lodge. So, what is unit election rate, and sort of how do we figure it out? So, units in a council, as of right now, that consists of troops and teams. But as you know, or as I hope you know, on February 1st, with the introduction of young women into Scouts BSA units, the Order of the Arrow decided at our national committee meeting back in May that every Sea Scout ship and venturing crew would also be eligible to hold an OA unit election. So, which, that's really exciting, right? For the first time in our history, the Order of the Arrow will not just be the honor society for Boy Scout troops, or soon to be Scouts BSA units, but for all scouting units, obviously except for Cub Scouts. So, you can just go in here and include troops, teams, Sea Scout ships, and venturing crews. That will be part of what we measure next year. So if your or if your lodge is not already, please start to plan for and make sure that you have, contacts to schedule unit elections in Sea Scout ships and venturing crews next year, because that will count towards your 100% rate that we talked about. So, there's, as you'll see here, there's a little bit of a breakdown. So we've got units without OA unit elections. We've got units that hold OA unit elections, and the red box there, and the percentage in your council that applies to units is how the unit election rate is determined. And of course, that's based on the amount of units in the council. So, I'd recommend to you guys, I know oftentimes when we're talking about unit elections, we refer to them as, troop elections, interacting with scoutmasters. I'd advise you guys, from a branding perspective, to start really referring to them as unit leaders, which of course would classify the unit leaders in in venturing crews, Sea Scout ships, Boy Scouts BSA units, and varsity teams in kind of the same category, and then units sort of being a catch-all for all of those. So I advise you to start really trying to standardize that within your lodge leadership and within your unit elections teams. So how is the unit election rate calculated? The unit election rate is literally, again, what percentage of the units in your council, out of all of the units in the council, actually conduct unit elections. So what's the process? So first being, unit elections teams are trained in your lodge. I know this isn't really new to anyone, but it's kind of important to understand how the process works. The next step would be the chapter chief, or the youth responsible, or the team responsible for unit elections within your council. If you're a smaller lodge, maybe that's just the unit elections committee. Request unit leader contact information. Folks in the council office are usually incredibly helpful with getting that, and I'm sure you guys will need to lean on them, especially as we start to make contact with these new Sea Scout ships and venturing crews that we've never before been able to hold unit elections in. Step 3, the unit elections team contacts unit leaders in all of these units. There's sort of a common misconception that 100% of unit elections in the council means that 100% of the units that wanted unit elections in the council is what that classifies as. And often that's even more misconceived as only if units reach out to us does that count as part of the 100%. There's an expectation that lodges are actively reaching out to every single unit, not just that units will reach out to us. Unit leaders have a lot on their plate, right? My dad was Scoutmaster for 7 years, and obviously, as we know, the whole 1 hour a week joke, it's a lot more than that. They've got a lot on their plate. There's a lot of different directions that their head's being pulled in. So making sure that they remember to schedule a unit election on their own is not always something that's going to be top of mind. It's important for us to make sure that it is. So that's where making sure that we're making contact comes into play here. Step 4, the chairman coordinates date and time of the unit elections, of course, figures out when they're going to be. It's important that we actually, deliver on our commitment to show up there. I know that there were a few times when I was the unit elections chairman and when I was lodge chief where we missed a unit election, right? And sometimes that can give a really negative look of the OA for these units because, they just schedule time in their troop meeting that occurs every week. Obviously, there's not a lot of time that occurs in these unit meetings, and we didn't show up, right? And they're not going to, remember every time that we did, they're going to remember the one time that we didn't. Um, and if that happens, obviously you want to make sure that, first of all, you're in close contact and make sure that the people that were assigned to run it are still committed to doing so. But then if they're not able to, you proactively reach out to them, apologize beforehand. And then if that doesn't happen, if there's, kind of a ball dropped somewhere, then it really comes into play that you need to, give these guys like 5-star service, right? So like, reach out to the unit leader, have like the lodge chief directly reach out to the unit leader, apologize. We promise that it's not going to happen again. Can you please give us another time to go and to do this? And then make sure that you're sending your A team, right? You're sending the best unit elections team that you have to make the best impression on these folks and to correct that kind of negative taste that they might have in their mouth from us, not delivering on our commitment. I know that it doesn't happen in every lodge, and it's very rare that it does. But I recall when it does happen, it's really not something that they look on the OA for fondly. So the team carries out the unit election, carries out it well and in accordance with OA policy. There's a helpful guide to unit elections on the Order of the Era website, which can kind of be like a supplementary document to the Guide to Inductions. I encourage you guys to look at that if you haven't already. And then the chairman follows up with the unit leader. And the most important part of kind of the closeout here is that at the end of the unit election, which really ties in closely to induction rate, which of course is the next key performance indicator of being a high performing lodge, is that we give them information, the folks that are elected, about when the ordeal is taking place and how they can sign up. Quick, clean, actionable steps for how they can do that. My lodge always gives out a letter to both the candidates and then a letter for their parents explaining what the Order of the Era is and why their son, or in February their daughter, should be a part of it. And obviously, that part of that is a really compelling presentation from your unit elections team to make sure that we are really selling the OA, because I think that, and those of you that have heard me talk before will know where I'm going with this, but that as an organization, we have a lot of room for improvement in terms of talking with non-members about what we actually do. So the better we can get at talking with parents, unit leaders, and potential candidates about what the OA is, the more people will see wanting to actually go through their induction, and then more people will want to see actually wanting to get involved afterwards. And I think that the best chance that we have to deliver on that education piece is at the unit election. And getting the contact information from these folks afterwards is critically important. We take the time to call lots of lodge members every time we have a lodge event coming up. But like, how much time do we devote to calling potential candidates or elected candidates to get them to actually become members and go through their ordeal? It's something that I know when I was lodge chief we didn't spend nearly enough time on, and I know if we did, we would have seen that induction rate come a lot closer to 90% than it was. So moving on, from a national perspective, I think it's really valuable to kind of look at where we are and where we're going. As you'll see, in 2013, 55% of the units throughout the entire nation, only 55% held unit elections. So half did not, which I think is kind of the more important number to look to here. In 2014, it looks like we went up a little bit, 61%, and then the number continued to drop. So in 2016 and 2017, there were more units across the entire nation, across our entire organization, that did not hold unit elections than units that did hold unit elections. And I bet that with just a few more phone calls, with just a little bit more outreach and a little bit more coordination, we would have gotten that number up. I mean, think about it, right? If we can run unit elections well in our lodge, if that's our primary focus to make sure that that's something that we do well every single year, that requires a lot, right? It requires us recruiting a lot of youth to help to actually conduct these elections. It requires us to have a relationship with every single unit across the council, and it's a huge logistical undertaking. And if you can do that, if your lodge can kill it at unit elections, then we can export those organizational skills, those relationships, and we can leverage them to get more people to go through their ordeal. We can leverage them to get more people to actually go to our events, to pay dues, to become active. And I bet you that if we were able to get 100% of every unit to hold unit elections every single year, you'd start to see 3 times as many people attending your fellowship weekends and your banquets. And it's simple as that. I mean, it's obviously something that if we really think about it, we're like, oh yeah, of course we already knew that. But the idea behind this whole high performing lodge initiative is to provide the focus, because we give lodges a lot to do, right? You've got to run a banquet, run, ordeal weekends, run, get people to NOAC, get people to conclave, promote high adventure, promote the national leadership seminar, send people to participate. But if you focus on these three key things, with unit elections being the most important, then everything else will just start to become easier. So, what makes a good unit election rate? Of course, it it requires a little bit of creativity. Convincing units that don't currently hold unit elections to actually to host one. And how do we do that? It really is on a unit to unit basis, but I think that it's important, again, from a customer service perspective, to ask them, like, what is the reason why you're not as apt to have the OA come and do a unit election in your council. A few different reasons that I commonly hear are being a scheduling conflict, right? Like when unit leaders say that the Order of the Arrow, quote, takes older scouts from their troop, it's not so much that they take older scouts from their troop, if my assessment is correct, and more that there are scheduling conflicts between the lodge and the unit, which requires some youth to choose between their troop or their unit and between the lodge. And the lodge is a much bigger organization than a local Boy Scout unit is. So if the lodge takes the initiative 18 months before every single year and comes up with a calendar, most units hold their annual planning once a year. And then that would give units 6 months of lead time before they do their annual planning to try to plan a calendar that does not conflict with OA events. So that's one kind of big recommendation. And then in terms of other things, maybe it's a bad taste. Maybe they had some negative experience with the OA. Maybe there's a unit leader that was in the Order of the Arrow when they were younger and had a negative experience. Whatever it is, I think it's important to communicate that we're different now. Talk about from a personal perspective what the Order of the Arrow has done to make your life better, and how it can make the lives of the scouts in their unit better, and how it can make them better leaders. And I would hope that, because every unit leader just wants nothing more than to see their scouts have the best experience possible, then that's something that they would be able to do. If there are any specific sort of complaints or specific reasons that you guys receive that kind of are the rationale provided for them not wanting to hold the unit election, I'd be happy to help you work through those and maybe come up with a creative way to address them. But I think, frankly, it's much less of an innovation problem than it is an execution problem. We don't need to have a brainstorming session to figure out that the best way for us to get more units to host unit elections is just maybe we need to call them one more time. Maybe we need to send them a letter by mail instead of via email. The more points of contact that we can use to get units to actually schedule them, I think the more success that you're going to see. And of course, conducting high quality unit elections. Taking the time to recruit more people to come to your unit elections training every single year, and taking the time to make sure it's a really solid presentation, and giving everyone the opportunity to become experts on the Order of the Arrow and on the unit election process will make your lives that much easier throughout the unit election season, and will mitigate headaches moving forward. So for units that don't currently hold unit elections, I sort of already hit on a bunch of these. I think that visibility is also a huge point, right? The more people and sashes that we can have at council executive board meetings for the lodge chief, or at district roundtables and council events, and the more people can actually see the OA, the more that it can help us to mitigate that, kind of gap that we have in terms of not being able to effectively talk about what we do as an organization to non-members. Forming relationships with unit commissioners, it's actually another great point. So unit commissioners are kind of the liaison from the council and from the district to the local troop. Most just like most airmen, their only interaction with the Order of the Arrow happens at the lodge or chapter level. Most Boy Scouts and most scouts and all units, their only interaction with the Boy Scout program occurs in their local unit. So the more that we can do to get that link, between the unit and the council, which equates to the lodge, to the unit, the better. And unit commissioners, that's kind of their thing. So they communicate to the local unit, and if we can form relationships with them, maybe talk to them at roundtable meetings, try to brainstorm ways for us to get them to help us to get into units to hold unit elections. I think the more effective of a strategy that might be, because they know the unit leaders more than we do, and that relationship that they have is something that we can leverage, especially if the unit commissioners are in the OA themselves. And of course, holding calling parties, right? Who doesn't like hanging around for another 30 minutes at the LEC meeting, maybe having some pizza, and just split up the list of unit leaders across the council and just have every LEC member call all of them. It doesn't take that much time, but it would save you a whole lot of headache, and it would, again, everything that you can do to help to hit that 100% is going to be valuable. So in terms of when you're actually conducting the unit election, there are a few different things, all of which are available in both the Guide to Inductions and in this Guide to Unit Elections, which is available on the OA website. The cover letter, which kind of gives the key points about like when the ordeal actually is, why, how much it costs, how they sign up. That would be given to the candidates. A lodge event calendar. If people in their hands, as soon as they're elected, know that conclave's the weekend right after the induction, much higher chance that they're going to actually be able to attend. And then, as I mentioned before, activation being them attending their first event within the first 6 months, that would, again, help your activation rate as well. And then also, at the unit election, you can try to figure out who, this is just a simple Lodge Master export, is Brotherhood eligible. Maybe talk to the folks at the troop meeting or at the unit meeting who are Brotherhood eligible, encourage them to attend. I'm sure the OA troop unit rep, if they're at the unit election, would be able to help you do that as well. And then of course the unit elections request form is helpful to kind of carry on you at all times, whether you're at a roundtable or whether you're at a council event. So we can easily get that to unit leaders. And then I know a lot of lodges have started to transition away from paper forms and into digital forms on their website or through a survey app like Google Forms, which can help you to kind of manage the scheduling. Personally, I prefer that. And as we'll see above, there's a link to kind of a best practice site talking about the OA camp coordinator. Where do we get more people that are potential prospects for recruiting to do and to help us with scheduling unit elections than at summer camp? I know that all units go to their council's camp, but there are a very significant amount that do. So having an OA camp coordinator, having someone at camp that can be a liaison is incredibly helpful as well. I know that some lodges are able to run unit elections at summer camp. It's kind of a unique situation by situation thing, because again, I know in my council at least only 50% of our units actually go to our camps, so we'd only be able to hit a small amount of the units in camp if we were to do that. So it's certainly on a case by case basis. Forming relationships with commissioners, there's a few different ideas of ways we can do that. Actively inviting them to lodge events. Maybe there's some sort of dinner or some sort of meeting that the lodge hosts to talk with commissioners and to form relationships with them. Getting advisors or older youth in the lodge to become unit commissioners is the more ways that we can kind of integrate ourselves into the unit program and into the link between the council and the unit, the better. Calling parties, here's a sample script. This is something that I'm sure would be valuable to you if you guys want to use this in the future. Feel free to completely steal this language and use it at your next LEC meeting to call unit leaders. We'll make sure to post this on our website afterwards. And again, visibility. Maybe it consists of stocking the concession stand at a council event, or running a program at the council camporee, or having some airmen and sashes, helping out with the flag ceremony at the council dinner, the district dinner. Maybe it's a fundraising campaign. We're selling patches to help build a new pavilion at camp, or maybe it's us promoting how the lodge is using the OA service grant this year to help build a new project at camp and make the experience for all who attend better. Or maybe it's even someone from the lodge conducting a Denchi training, Trail the Eagle seminar. Visibility is everything. course, we already talked about this. Starting February 1st, there's an expectation that we are not only reaching out to Scouts BSA units and to varsity teams, if there are any in your council, but also to Sea Scout ships and to venturing crews. And just to sort of reiterate, I don't know if I actually mentioned this earlier, the way that the eligibility requirements are working for Sea Scout ships and venturing crews, there was a new membership page that was posted on the OA website yesterday that actually really in detail gives you information on this and gives you a very comprehensive FAQ to answer any questions that you guys have about the membership update. I'd encourage you to check that out. But for venturers, the equal rank for being first class in a Scouts BSA unit is the Discovery rank, and they're also expected to have the 15 nights of camping. Kind of what counts as part of that is up to the unit leader's discretion, and same goes with Sea Scouts. 15 nights of camping is up to the unit leader's discretion, and the rank that they're expected to earn in order to be eligible is the Ordinary rank. So, I mean, conducting high-quality unit elections, when you're putting together your unit elections training and trying to get as many youth as possible to be part of that, because, of course, we don't want untrained youth to be running unit elections because they are a direct representation of not just your chapter, but your lodge and also the Order of the Arrow as a whole, because they are the representative of the entire organization, because technically the OA visits every single unit every single year, or that's the goal. I'd encourage you to use as many resources as you can from the national publications to make sure that your units, your teams are fully equipped to not only have those pre-prepared resources, but also to answer any questions about policy or about the election process itself. Standardize the election. We don't want, if you get a Big Mac in Florida, it's the same as if you get a Big Mac in Massachusetts. We want to make sure that if we're running a unit election in one part of the council, it's the exact same as it would have been in the other part of the council. Again, there's a clear policy of how these are supposed to be conducted, so make sure to really stick to that and to make sure that your unit elections teams know that as well. And of course, visit the unit. So even if no unit election is conducted, we want to be doing some sort of presentation to get our foot in the door, even if the unit either A, doesn't have anyone eligible, or B, doesn't actually want one, right? If we can at the very least just come and just talk about what the OA is. Sometimes if the unit leader is apprehensive to actually holding an election, after that they'll poll the scouts in their unit, and then they would change their mind. They'd say, yes, we do want a unit election. You could either do it there, or you could schedule another time to come back and host it. But just because you came and you took the effort to give that presentation, that's why they're changing their minds. Or, you could certainly make a camp promotion, just talk about what the OA is, kind of dangle the carrot a little bit, so when people are eligible, if the unit doesn't have anyone that is, then next year, they'll be one of the first units to want to host one, because it's something that their youth are looking forward to. I encourage you to go to this URL, check out some more information from the best practices unit election packet, and from the guide to unit elections on the OA website. Own your message. When we're there and when we're talking about the OA, what are the things that we want to talk about? We want to talk about why, there's no better leadership development organization in the world. We provide opportunities for youth that, no other organization in the world does. I always talked about, when I was at unit elections, after I was launch chief and when I was applying for colleges, that I was able to basically put on my extracurricular activities section that I was the chief executive officer of a nonprofit organization at 17 years old. And obviously it raises some eyebrows, but it's something that your youth can confidently talk about, because we actually give those sorts of opportunities to people, and the chance to grow in an environment where with managed risk is kind of how I always like to phrase it, where it's better to make mistakes in knee socks and a sash than it is in a suit and tie. When we make a mistake, we get the chance to talk to our advisor about how we can improve and get better next time, and then we do. There's no other organization that I know of that provides that and provides the opportunities we have, like getting to attend all of the OA High Adventure, all of the BSA High Adventure bases for an extremely discounted cost through OA High Adventure, or getting to attend the best leadership training program that the Boy Scouts have to offer through the National Leadership Seminar, which the region conducts on an annual basis. We conduct 3 a year, and then the next one will be taking place as sort of a shameless plug in March at Camp Alpine in New Jersey, and then the National War of the Air Conference. Scouting's second largest national event is hosted by the OA. We get the chance to meet people from across the country. We get to see really cool shows, fellowship training, activities, you name it. We get to do it. And the national leadership of the OA, the national chief of the OA, every year gets to be part of the national report to the nation contingent that hand delivers the BSA's annual report in the Oval Office to the President of the United States. And that's pretty cool, in my opinion. So things like that, highlight the possibilities and highlight your personal scouting journey, your OA journey, and how that's helped you to become a better leader, to become a better scout. And those are things that really resonate with people. So again, if you're visiting a unit without a unit election, you can teach a skill, you can conduct an activity. Camping promotions are super popular, and just generally talking about what the OA is and how it and why it's something that the youth should be a part of. Okay, thanks for bearing with me through that. So at this point, I'm going to take a quick pause and look into the questions that we've received. If you haven't sent yours yet, I'd encourage you to do those now. Okay, so one note I received, which is actually a really great point, is that the varsity program was discontinued last year, so that's something kind of that must have just been residual from other BSA trainings a few years back. So obviously, just ignore that. But just accounting for the fact that we have multiple different types of units to host elections in is certainly an important component to think about. And then the other question being, how important is the election team training to a successful election process? I think that, every year your unit elections live or die on how capable your trained teams are. So finding a way to standardize that process into making sure that, people are trained well, and that a lot of people are trained, the easier that it will be for you to hit that 100% number every single year. I'll just check my email to see if anyone sent any questions there. Again, if you're on your mobile phone, or if there's a question that you would prefer for me to answer specifically, please reach out to me at 2018chief@northeast.oa-bsa.org. So what are some tools that we can use at elections that are provided by the national organization? Again, there's some links included to that towards the end of this presentation, which will also be included in the slide deck that we upload to our website afterwards. But in terms of resources, I mean, there's the Guide to Unit Elections, there's the Guide to Inductions, and there's these other best practices, that talk about things that lodges do to help them to be successful at unit elections. And I think there's a lot more as well that I'm probably blanking out on. But yeah, definitely check out the OA website. There is lots there to help lodges run successful unit elections. Next question: how can the OA make adults feel more apt to get youth to events? That's a great question. Obviously, without adult support, most of our younger scouts that don't have licenses, and are unable to drive or transport themselves to events, might need some help in order to do so. So encouraging adults to get more youth to get to events. I mean, I think that, the thing that is our most effective tactic in getting people to actually activate and getting people to actually be active and to be engaged in the OA is giving them a reason to be there and giving them a reason to be part of, what we're doing. One story I always like to share is that at my first, induction weekend, they needed someone because it was a lot of rain outside, right? So, like in the week leading up to it, and we didn't have any dry wood, so they needed someone to pick up bundles of dry wood from the store down the street on our way there to make sure that we had plenty of wood for the cheerful fire, that we were building for our ceremony in the evening. And because they asked me to do that, I had a reason to be there. I knew that someone else probably could have done it, but I felt like I was responsible for making sure that happened, and that's the reason why I wanted to be part of the event, was because I felt needed, right? I felt that I had ownership over what was happening. So I think that certainly applies to youth in a very significant way, but I think it also applies to adults. There's always things for adults and for advisors to do. So encouraging your lodge advisor and working with your lodge advisor to find things to keep adults busy, I think is the way to kind of encourage both youth and adults to go. And of course, if both of them are going, then why would advisors not help to transport the youth? It's certainly different for everyone, but again, give them a reason to be there. Next question is, what are your thoughts on election teams conducting full-length meetings for troops, as in, instead of a 20-minute visitation, planning and leading a troop meeting is a method of increasing OA visibility? I think that's an excellent idea. I think that if the unit is supportive of that and that's what the unit wants, then we should not. That's great, right? The Order of the Arrow, is home to the cream of the crop and the best of the best in terms of what the Boy Scouts have to offer. And I'm sure that airmen could run a really excellent troop meeting and give an example to the older scouts in the unit about how they can make their election process and their troop run even more efficiently. So if the unit's supportive of that, I think that it's an excellent idea. I think the reason why we often go with the part of the meeting is because units don't want us to take off their entire the entire host of their or the entire schedule of their meeting. And again, I'd be happy to answer any of these questions more comprehensively via email if you guys would like me to. Can unit leaders say no to scouts after they've been elected? Great question. So basically, the process as dictated in the Guide to Unit Elections, and the process that I have always kind of used when running unit elections, is the first thing that you do is you get to the unit meeting and you talk to the unit leader and you get a full list of all of the scouts that are eligible to be in the OA, and you put them all on the the template list, and then you get the unit leader to sign off. And as soon as they sign off, they have basically certified that they are okay with every single one of those scouts, if they are elected, being members of the Order of the Arrow. As soon as that's happened, then the next step is simply for the the unit election to happen, and for the scouts in the unit to certify Scout Spirit, to determine, in their opinion, if they think that these scouts should be part of the National Honor Society. So as soon as the unit leader signs off, which you should get them to do at the beginning of the meeting, then there's really, I don't know any reason why, and frankly, I don't think that they can kind of rescind that if the scouts do choose to elect them. At the beginning of the meeting, however, if there's a scout that they don't think should be in the OA, getting Scoutmaster's approval, unit leader approval is part of being eligible. So they do have the ability to take a name off the list. And then when you just read off the list of eligible scouts at the beginning of the election, you would just not be able to list them as someone who's eligible, because part of being eligible is having unit leader approval. Okay, next question. Let me just read it first. So, question being, and obviously this is one that we get a lot, right? And what I will say publicly is that in terms of, bringing young women into scouting and into the Order of the Arrow, every single opportunity that a male and then a member of the OA has now as a youth will be, there will be no opportunities that are just for females, just for males, vice versa. Every opportunity that the OA has in terms of leadership, in terms of involvement, will be available to both youth, females and males. And that also is extended to, ceremonial teams. In terms of, ceremonial roles, part of the task force nationally is reviewing to make sure that we're not only being inclusive, right? We're not only being gender neutral in terms of our publications, but we're being welcoming to females and to ensuring that every opportunity is not just available, but something that we're encouraging them to be a part of. Something that I like to share, and something that I think is really important for next year to consider, is not only are we going to have a diversity of membership coming in, but with that comes a huge diversity of perspective, a different way and a different opinion of how we can do things. And for an organization that, in a large part has done a lot of the same things for the past 103 years, I think that it'll give us a lot of, new creative ideas that can help us to, readjust the way that we're doing things to help us to hit these key benchmarks. So to answer the question, yes, females will be able to participate in ceremonies teams just like males would be able to. And I encourage you to stay up to date on the membership page on the OA website. There is a lot that we don't know about how this is going to work yet. I know that lodges are very directly going to be involved in the implementation, and I know that the national organization is working very hard to make sure that before the change actually occurs, there's ample guidance for lodges, so you guys can answer those questions and know exactly what you're supposed to do. But yes, one thing that I can say definitively is that the same opportunities will be available to both. Okay, I'll give about 30 more seconds if there are any questions that you guys would like to contribute. Okay, well, I will, seeing none, I will wrap up. So again, these are the resources that we have available to you. I'd encourage you to take a look at all of these. The first link is where we're going to post this slide deck after the conclusion of the town hall this evening. The training video is something that I'd encourage you guys to take a look at as well, and then standardizing the union election. These are all incredibly helpful links that will be available in the slide deck afterwards. Thank you so much for everything that you guys have done this year to not only make your lodges great, to ensure that we're on track to becoming everyone is on track to becoming a high performing lodge, but to making my term great. I've enjoyed nothing more than getting the chance to go to your conclaves, to your lodge events, to interact with you guys at NOAC. It's been certainly one of the best years of my life. Obviously, it's bittersweet to see it come to a close in just a few days, but I'm really grateful to have been the region chief of the best region in the Order of the Arrow, the first region in the Order of the Arrow, and I'm glad that you were all a part of it. Again, thank you so much for your attention and for your leadership. If there's any other questions that you guys have, feel free to give me a call or to email me at the email listed on the slide here, or to reach out to Bob. He's also happy to answer any questions. This concludes our town hall for this evening. Thanks again for a great town hall and for a great 2018. I appreciate it.